So, good morning, everyone. This is the second day of this 3-day retreat on this Dharma medicine. And the specific Dharma medicine that's being offered at this retreat is the Dharma medicine of the 3 fierce mantras. First, a word or two about retreat. We are now in our second day, and whatever thoughts you might have had about your retreat, or what it would be like, or what it wouldn't be like, or what you wanted, or what you didn't want it. Hopefully, by now, reality is set in, and it is what it is. One of the things we want to do in this life is learn to live in reality, as we said yesterday, and not our thoughts about our reality. And a lot of our thoughts about reality are future-based. We have lots of expectations, anticipations, fantasies that we don't just bring to retreat. We bring it often to our day. We bring it to our life. We bring it to so many things. Our expectations are simply our own mental fabrications, our own thoughts. They are not real. Reality is real. So retreat is what it is. Sometimes our minds are clear, sometimes our minds are foggy, sometimes we're with it, sometimes we're not with it. Sometimes there's a lot of energy, sometimes it's not a lot of energy, or kind of stasis. Sometimes we're wide awake, sometimes we're sleepy. That is just the unfolding of a day. It is important. One of the reasons that we have group retreats and not just only solitary retreats, there is something significant about being in a group situation, being in a schedule. We don't have control anymore, do we? And some of us enjoy that, and some of us don't enjoy it. We like to do things our way. Which again, like we said yesterday, in situation to situation, it sounds benign. But often living a life where we're always doing it our way often gets us into trouble. Right? And so part of waking up is also waking up to our interdependence, our interconnection. And so when we are in retreat, in a certain way, we surrender some of our individuality to the group and to the energy and the schedule of the retreat. And as it was said just in the opening verse, we go as a river. A river is made up of many drops, but they're all going in the same direction. So it is important that we learn to go with the flow, to follow the schedule impeccably. Not for it is in a certain sense, usually when we begin our practice, we are practicing for ourselves and our own difficulty and our own aspirations, and that's where most people begin. But along the way, we want to widen that to include others. So we show up not just for ourselves, we show up for others. And that is a wonderful thing when we learn to let go of our self-centeredness, our self-cherishing, our overweening self-concern, and learn to let go of that to benefit others. One can practice for others. Thich Nhat Hanh often says that each one of us in a group situation, we should see ourselves as a bell of mindfulness. So when someone else is looking at us and they see us practicing mindfully, present, they may not be. And that may inspire them, renew their energies. So that's the way we want to be. That's why we take quite seriously not talking. Somebody might say, oh, well, in this situation, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. Because we are continually to make choices totally from our own framework. And that is often out of sync with the larger reality of other people and situations. Again, why do that? Well, as we will hear about in these next 2 days, that one of the fundamental sources of our suffering is our egoism, is our self-centeredness, is our cherishing of myself over others and making my own needs and wants, etc., the primary concern of my life and my endeavors. Seeing life through that very narrow framework is very narrowing. And again, like we said yesterday, we should not see our practice of a spiritual path, in this case a Dharma path, as a series of techniques. We often think it's about filling my mind up with lots of techniques. And which technique do I use now? You know, we're always kind of to remember which technique, what do I use now? Again, that's where we begin. But this is about transforming our minds. What is our mind? That which is listening to me right now. That is your mind. How is that mind? That's your question. How is my mind? Is it open, spacious, free, present, connected to what's going on around me? Or is everything very narrow and constricted? Just lost in my own thoughts, my own judgments, my own evaluations, my own inner commentary. Is this all? Is this the way I live life? Which also creates a very narrow range of emotion. So again, we are not practicing just a bunch of techniques. We are practicing techniques to transform our minds. And again, the same way, our involvement in something like a retreat, in a group retreat, is helping us. I mean, to see how easy life is when I just, what? Go along. But I would imagine many people here already have had lots of judgments. You'd like things to be done differently. Why are they doing it this way? Why don't they do it that way? They should be doing this. They should be doing that. Right? All that nonsense. Please watch your minds. You will learn everything you need to do to be happy and to stop suffering. So there's a question about, well, let's just put this aside. I think this will be addressed. If not, we'll come back to it. By the way, so in over these last 24 hours since we met last, you have been meditating, you have been practicing, you have been having guided meditations, you've been reflecting. As I said yesterday, these 3 fierce mantras are outcomes of a process. They are conclusions, they are summaries. Right? If we go through the same process, we should hopefully go to the same summary and have the same understanding. So, are there any questions from your practice yesterday in terms of what you reflected on, what you meditated on, your own meditative experiences? Any questions that come up not understanding what the talk was about yesterday? Please don't be shy. Yes.
I have a question about causes and conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this in a small group yesterday. Is it important to understand, to do deep looking into causes and conditions? Or is it just important to accept that that's the way they are, and then you need to look at yourself as to how you deal with the causes and conditions? That's what you should spend your time doing deep looking into your response to them. But the actual causes and conditions, can we just sort of let that go and just say, that's just the way it is?
Can you?
Prefer that.
You prefer that, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, of course, it is just the way it is. Whatever the causes and conditions. Right? So the question really, I think, is getting at two things. One is, when we look at causes and conditions, there are historical causes and conditions. Right? And as you know, in somewhat our kind of psychotherapeutic outlook here in the West, in America, causes and conditions. Thank you. So this was a good, somebody asked a question. The activist seeks to bring about change, not content to accept what is. How does Buddhism address this? We address this just the way Brian did. This was a good demonstration. Thank you, Brian. Right. Everybody got the demonstration, the answer? Oh, I thought that's what you were demonstrating. No? Oh. You mean you were just changing the batteries? I thought you were demonstrating a Dharma principle for us.
I'm demonstrating Dharma.
Right. That's the problem. What is? What happened? All of a sudden there's feedback, right? That's what is, isn't it? That's the is of what is. Now, this is not stupidity. This is not ignorance. This is not lack of common sense, right? So, Brian, we could have all just sat here, the feedback got louder and louder, and we could have gone, what? What is. Right? And in a certain sense, that is true, isn't it? I mean, that's true. And, it's not the end of the world, and right? What is. But Brian, understanding what is, understand that there were causes and conditions that were creating that. And because of the nature of our talk together and recording and stuff like that, he knew there was a solution, or he thought there was a solution. He could have been wrong. Right? So he acted, didn't he? I mean, he didn't, hopefully he wasn't over there, angry at the batteries for running out. Right? He wasn't angry at corporate America for making batteries that run out. Right? He wasn't, he didn't personalize it. He wasn't disappointed in himself that he didn't anticipate the batteries were running out, and thought, what kind of idiot am I? And he didn't think that Fred's probably thinking, I'm not doing my job, right? So, right, I mean, there's so many directions it could go. The truth what? It is what it was, and Brian decided to act. That's all. Right? So, what is just an acceptance of what is. What comes next is up to you. Right? But the fear and the anger and the disappointment and the hurt and the judgment and the criticism and the non-acceptance and the resistance, that is all occurring where? Yeah, in your own mind. It's not occurring in reality. Right? What's occurring in reality is whatever is occurring in reality. What is it? It is. Right? And for some people, what is fine, and other people, what is not fine. And you've got to decide in every situation, where you are with it. And then hopefully, if the mind is not clouded with your own fabrications and the mind is not clouded with your own emotionality, and that's not what's driving you, which is really what's driving most people in situations, and you can really see the situation clearly as it is, right? See, how do you see the situation as it is? How do you see a situation as it is? How do you see a person as they are? Well, you could look deeply, but sometimes you just have to look. You have to just look. You have to just be present. But when we're present, we don't mean present with our thoughts, present with our stuff, all our stuff. That's not being present. That's throwing our stuff onto the situation or onto the person. But to see things as they are is to be totally present to a situation. When you're totally present to a situation, you don't always have to be figuring out, analyzing, and all that stuff. You see what the problem is, and many things are clear. Sometimes it's not so clear. So there has to be more deep looking or reflection. Now, in terms of the question, the situation is, right? If it is helpful to look historically into it, right? If you're wondering, why am I this way, right? Why does this make me sad? Or why am I scared of this? Or why am I always angry at that? And why, if you wonder why, and it is helpful you to kind of go back in time to see the antecedent, the cause of that, if that helps you at least accept it, right? Accept it meaning, oh, now I understand where it's coming from, of course, right? Then that acceptance may make it easier for you to then work on it. But the work on it always has to go where? In the present anyhow. Because whatever the historic, in other words, whether it's personal or whether it's global, right? In other words, like take something like global warming, right? We can understand, scientists can explain to us all the causes and effects of global warming, right? That's helpful. How we got here. But we can also understand what's going on right now in terms of how to make an intervention or whether anything can be done to change, right? In the same way, understanding, this is coming from my childhood, or this is coming from that situation, or that traumatic situation, or I can see where I got my anxiety because, I grew up in a home where there was a lot of anxiety, or a lot of depression, or this happened, or that happened, or the way people treated me in third grade. We can understand all that stuff. But in most cases, understanding that stuff does not liberate us. We just are... we end up at like sort of the archetype of that is Woody Allen. Everybody know Woody Allen is? Right, he's been in psychotherapy for 40 years. He has great understanding to all his neuroses, but he's still incredibly neurotic. But he's an insightful neurotic. Which I guess gives some mileage, but it's not freedom. So at the end of the day, right, whatever historical things have caused us, and I think in a certain way that's interesting because unfortunately most people think the way they are is the way they've always been. Most people say, oh, well, that's just the way I am. I'm sort of an anxious person, or I'm sort of a depressed person, or I'm sort of just an angry person, or I'm sort of a judgmental person, or I'm sort of a critical person, or I'm sort of a shy person. And, and the truth is, certainly there are some things that are characteristics that are inherited, but most of it isn't. most infants are fairly open, clean slates. I would imagine most of the people in this room, whoever you think you are with all your stuff, you didn't have your stuff at 3 years old. I mean, can anybody remember having their stuff at 3 years old? No. We were conditioned. That's what causes and conditions mean. Conditions influence us, right? In the same way it was said yesterday, when talked about our true nature, we can say we talk like clay. Everything, every clay sculpture, every ceramic is made of clay, but it is all fashioned in endless different ways. Due to the fabricator. Most of us have not consciously fabricated ourselves, even though we think we have. That's not true. We are just simply an endless bundle of endless variables, most of which just kind of influence without us even knowing it. We have lived very unconscious lives. Entering a Dharma life, a spiritual life, is beginning to make our development conscious. It's a radical step for many of us. Right. Again, all these causes and effects, causes and conditions have brought me to where? To here. That is what is. That's the truth. Right? Pauline is Pauline. Right? Why is Pauline Pauline? Because?
That's the way I was born.
Born and, well, no, not the way you were born. Because the way you were conditioned came after that. Some of it's where you're born, right? But most of it is cause and conditions that happened afterwards. Okay. So now Pauline understands that. Yeah. I have to accept myself totally the way I am. Because that's who I am. But what? Because I'm learning this path, I can enter into a process of healing and transformation. Right? I can become a Buddha. That's what we say in Buddhism. I can become a Buddha. Right? Now, see, when Pauline becomes a Buddha, she's not going to look like that. She's going to look like that. Right? So it's going to be Pauline Buddha. And if Pauline wants, she can condition her life to move in that direction, can't she? Right. And that becomes very conscious. That's why the more we practice, the more we change. We understand cause and effect. This is why you probably meditated on it yesterday, reflected on it. Many people think, oh, I know about karma. Buddhism, cause and effect. Karma, the teachings of cause and effect are one of the most profound teachings in this path. They give us the key to our own transformation. Because all the practices you do are all things that are making causes for transformation. In the same way, as long as we continue to have the same kind of mind states, the same kind of inner dialogue, the same kind of emotional states, as long as we keep nurturing that and supporting that, consciously or unconsciously, that will be our future. Why? Because of cause and effect. That's all. Apple seeds create apples. Peach seeds create peaches. Right? If you want to grow happiness within yourself, if you want to grow equanimity within yourself, if you want to grow loving kindness in yourself, if you want to grow openness in yourself, if you want to grow all these things, you have to plant and cultivate the seeds. Right? And they will grow. Why will they grow? Because of cause and effect. That's the way this whole thing operates. It operates in the external world, it operates in the mental world, it operates in nature, you know. There are very few things in Buddhism that are called laws. This is called the law of cause and effect. It means it's a basic, and the Buddha did not get it through divine revelation. He got it just by looking deeply into life in his own mind. That's where he got the teaching. So the teaching of cause and effect. And when we get that too, because we've reflected on it deeply, understood it deeply, understand how it really operates at all levels, we then have the key. The question is, are we going to use it or not? So is that clear? Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, this is why meditation practice is so, you know, whatever has happened to you in the past that has created these seeds or formations within your mind from the past, you know, they're only problematic because they arise when? Now, in your life. So, you know, if you're going to change it, you have to change it now. So you have to understand right now, what is the process by way these things arise in me. Right. If we are mindful, you can begin to see them when they're present, but also get better at seeing what's causing them to arise. When you see what's causing them to rise, the causing conditions, you begin to have a sense, oh, if I go about healing or transforming that place in me that reacts in this way, it will no longer react in that way. Oh. Yeah. So again, I think when we're totally unconscious, to kind of understand a little better about how we are the way we are and not think the way we are is the way we are. I mean, there's nobody in here they are the way they are just because you made it up. We're here because we've been conditioned. Please understand that. It's just arrogance to think that somehow, or foolishness to think that somehow I am who I am because of, you know, I've created myself. No, endless causes and conditions have created you. But it is only now that we really have the possibility of knowing the choices we have available to us. That's why, again, in Buddhism, it is said everybody can have the aspiration to be a Buddha. A Buddha is what? A person is totally free of their conditioning. Not their physical conditioning. The Buddha still gets stomach aches, still dies, has a body, but the mind can be liberated from the conditioning. Let us look at this first fierce mantra. Whatever has to happen, let it happen. Now, obviously, there are always some people who would go, you know, whether it's batteries that aren't working, but a lot of times people go in their mind, well, what's he saying, right? I mean, does that mean if you're being raped, just let it happen? People should let it happen? Well, of course not. Right? Whatever has to happen means, and this is important, just like, you know, what we dealt with here. Whatever the situation is unfolding, it is unfolding, right? Just the way it is. Now, we may act, right? But do we know the outcome? No. The outcome will be what it'll be, won't it? Right? Right? Somebody may have a granddaughter who's taken a job that they think is a bad choice. They may talk with the granddaughter, but whatever it will be, right? I mean, that's what it means. Somebody on the other, on the grander scale of things, may be concerned about global warming and want to act and do things, but the unfolding of that has so many variables. Whatever it'll be, will be. Doesn't mean you don't act, right? But whatever, let it happen means it will unfold. You can't control it. A lot of times people get very frightened at that, right? I was speaking to a very a young parent, freaked out because they have come to the realization they can't keep their young child safe all the time. Right? Yeah. They go off. That's just the way it is, isn't it? I mean, I did say, well, you know, you could always keep them home forever. Right? But there may be a downside to that. Whatever has to happen, let it happen. This is not que sera, sera. This comes from a deep understanding about the way things are. So coming back to Brian and his great Dharma activity over there, you know, he put the batteries in, but what will be, right? If he was right, those things are playing, but if he was wrong, something else will occur. Because of causes and conditions. Right? It'll unfold the way it'll unfold. Doesn't mean you can't keep intervening, but it'll still be what it'll be from those interventions. Right? We have to begin to understand that it's sort of like we said yesterday, that we have to realize that this body, impermanent and fragile, prone to all kinds of discomforts and diseases and ultimately death, that's just the way it is. And we can do everything we can to give it good food and take it to the gym and you know, try to get it enough sleep and you know, do all that stuff. But still, what? Does anybody know how long they're going to live here? Anybody know how long they're going to live? No. Why not? It's unknown. Anybody know what their future is going to be? I mean, you can pay money and somebody will tell you. They'll read your palm. But the truth is, does anybody really know what their future will be? I mean, if there's somebody who knows, don't be shy. I'd be interested to hear from you. Is there anybody who knows how their future is going to unfold? Is there anybody here who knows what they're going to think in 5 minutes? What thought's going to come in their mind in 5 minutes? Is there anybody here who knows that? I mean, we don't even know that. And yet we are endlessly fabricating all kinds of future plans for ourselves and everybody else, as if it's going to happen that way. So whatever will happen, won't it? Can you see the benefit of this deep understanding? Please understand, this is, you know, like was said yesterday, mantras are what? Words of power, right? This mantra is a powerful word, but a mantra has to be used. This mantra has to be used. Can anybody see the benefit of having that kind of deep understanding, that you really understand that whatever has to happen, let it happen. It will happen. And I can't control it. Anybody even begin to see the benefit of really living that? What would be the benefit?
Well, I have a question.
So first, let's find the benefit, and then we'll come back to the question. That's fine.
The benefit is that we don't repeat. I would think that we don't repeat behaviors that we've had in the past that brought us suffering.
Right, it would certainly change. What's suffering would immediately end if we live this one. I'll give you a hint. It's a major mental health problem. Anxiety. Anybody ever hear about worry, anxiety, or fear? Panic, phobia. I mean, have you heard of any of that stuff? Right. Eliminate it. Because all anxiety and phobia is about what? What?
Fear of the future.
Yeah, fear of the future. Imagining what's going to happen and believing, that scares me. I don't want that to happen. Right? And yet what? But if you understand, that's the way life is. Things unfold. Stop trying to control it. You can't control it. What are you afraid of? I mean, what are we afraid of? The future won't be the way I want it. No, the future will not be the way you want it, or it may be the way you want it. Who knows? But the future will be what it will be. Isn't that true? I mean, don't just agree with me. You may disagree with me. Anybody think they could control their future? Control everything that's going to happen? Every day when I've come down here on 275, it's a miracle that I'm still here. Well, I mean, it's a blessing. Made it once again. Question?
It's kind of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You have certain things, like if you had a fire, you would control a child or an animal not to go in the fire, because we have generations and generations and generations to understand that that is not a good thing to do. We don't allow that to happen, so we've learned through not being scolded that that is not a good thing to do.
Right.
Pass that knowledge. With other behaviors like war or allowing, famines to happen to populations, what is in the mix that we don't honor that as much as we honor getting boiling water?
Well, that's interesting. Would you agree that, why are human beings so strong about training their children not to get burnt? I mean,
because it could kill them.
Do you think everybody agrees across culture that putting your hand in a fire is not a good idea?
I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so too. I would think whether you're Asian or New Guinea, I would agree that most people would agree taking your hand's child and roasting the fire is probably not. Yeah. So that's everybody gets that, don't they? Now, does everybody get that war is not good?
No.
No. A lot of people think war is what? Justified. Yeah. There it is. It's in the mind of people. I mean, you're right. It's causes and conditions. Right. When people begin to have that consciousness that harming another human being is not good. It is harming our brother and our sister, a family member, and understanding that, or even at the very least thinking, gee, I wouldn't want anybody to be killing me and my family. So how can you rationalize killing somebody else's? Right? I mean, I wouldn't want everybody killing my children and grandchildren because of ideology or because they were collateral damage when they're trying to kill somebody, right? I mean, right? So
right, because it's a group.
I don't know what nuts about it. I think it's just, I mean, again, it's just causes and conditions. People don't see what you see. It's just, why don't they see it? Because there's all kinds of justifications. I mean, why do people hurt one another? At the time, they justify it, don't they? Justification is an act of the mind. As Thich Nhat Hanh wrote in his poems during the Vietnam War, he said, thinking they're killing their enemy, they kill, one brother kills another brother. But the label is enemy. So they're not present to the reality. Why do so many of the soldiers have post-traumatic stress disorder? Why? Yeah, because what they've been told in their mind and the reality of what they're experiencing are different, and they can't make sense of it. So, causes and conditions. It's always causes and conditions. And if one is willing to look into causes and conditions, one can understand why somebody does what they do, why another person doesn't do the same. Why one person reacts in this situation, one person reacts in that situation. Causes and conditions, when you understand causes and conditions, you have understanding. When you have understanding, you have love. You don't have hatred. When you have understanding, you don't have judgment, you don't have criticism.
That's the missing piece.
What's the missing piece?
In teaching your children not to put their hands in the fire, it's motivated, it comes from love. And does it bring up?
You don't want them to harm themselves. Well, or just indifference. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, we're not going to get into it, but yeah, there's lots of reasons. But basically, yeah, that is why, these teachings and practices that purify the mind of its egocentricity, which means its sense of separateness, its sense of aloneness, its sense of meanness, allows people to experience their interconnection, which, in a healthy situation, a family, people naturally feel, right? I mean, we would say a parent that was indifferent to their child getting in a fire is somebody who is a damaged kind of human being, right? We'd say most normal people, doesn't matter their education or whatever, would have that sense of connection with that child that would see them as at least as an extension or a connection of themselves, that they would not want harm to come to them, right? Now, what if we had that kind of sense of connection, interconnection with everyone and everything? That's called the practice of non-self. The practice of non-self is the practice of connection to everything. The practice of self is I'm only connected to one thing. What's that? Me. Whatever has to happen, let it happen. This is not moral judgment. This is not ethical judgment. That all takes place in a different realm, in an important realm. This is the realm of understanding. Like we said yesterday, if you're living with a rattlesnake, and you choose not to, then something can be done. It doesn't mean we don't acknowledge that. It doesn't mean we don't, at the same time, if someone is criminally minded, harming, robbing, disrespecting laws, that they don't have to be dealt with in some way for their own sake and for the sake of the larger community, right? But it doesn't have to be done in hatred. It doesn't have to be done with resentment. It doesn't have to be done with the desire to hurt. Right? Because one understands that even that person is simply the product of their causes and conditions. Where does a human being learn to be that way? Right? They weren't born that way. So it's a very different world when one understands causes and conditions. And understands the only way you can ever change is by changing causes and conditions. Then we'll start creating different kind of human beings. Right. So this is, again, whatever has to happen, let it happen. This is a statement of deep understanding. Everything within you, your thoughts, your feelings, your perceptions, your family members, your loved ones, your friends, your family, your colleagues, society, the world, everything is operating according to this. Both in the realm of physicalness, the world of form, as well as within our own minds. Again, that not only gives us a way to understand deeply what's going on, but also gives us the keys to transformation. Why don't things change? Why don't I change? I read, I listen to Dharma talks, I go to retreat, and yet inside, same old, same old. Why is that? The answer would be what? Yeah, not practicing, not really changing the way I think, the way I speak, the way I act. Right? So it changes. How's it going to ever change? Reading will not change me. Right? Reading can point me in the direction of change, but the change has to occur where? Yeah, my own mind. It begins in our mind, and then it moves into the realm of words, speech, and action. That's understanding cause and effect. Yes. Yes.
Regarding this, for example, I can see in my own experience, I see the change. It's real. But it's not at the emotional level. Mm-hmm. For example, I can imagine, I was sitting here thinking as you were talking, where to be at a doctor's office now, just waiting or driving to the doctor's office, and I'm going to get the results of tests. It's real life.
No, that's real life. A lot of people are dealing with that.
I'm saying it's not happening to me.
Right, but that's... Right, exactly.
Okay, so, and then I'm waiting for the results to see if it is a malignancy or not.
Right.
Okay, I'm at the point that I can say all those things, believe it. I have no control. What am I going to say? I have no control whatsoever, whatever it is. Actually, I believe it ultimately for my own benefit. I believe it in my head. But I will have the butterflies in my stomach. Right. I can tell you that. And this is where I am in my spiritual path. All this knowledge has really sunk in the sense that I do know it. Okay, but I still get angry at it.
Yeah, there you go.
To my, the way I see it is a failure. It's something I need to do in my practice.
Yes.
The belief is so solid. I mean, I live it every day of my life that I have no control. Every day.
And yet, again, that's practice. Now, again. See, some people think their spiritual practice is about doing practices. Right? But to live a spiritual life of real transformation means you practice with those parts of yourselves that is deluded, that is suffering. Right? So you may get it, but there's a part of you that does not get it. How do you know that? Because you see her. Right, because you see the feelings and you see the reactivity. So you understand, I get it, but she doesn't get it. Right? And that's the truth. Well, you start acknowledging that, and you got to start practicing with her. Right? Because she's sitting in that doctor's office terrified of something. What is she terrified of?
The words, because
No, what is she terrified of?
Of the diagnosis.
Yeah, because why? Because she's deeply attached to what?
not having pain, not to the death.
Well, you don't know. Yeah, we don't know. She may be scared of death. She may be. You don't know her yet. So you got to know her. See, I don't know what she's scared of, but she's holding on to something, and she's afraid she's going to get news that she doesn't want to get. So you know that there's a part of you that's still holding on for dear life. Correct? Now, how do you know that? You do not know that when things are going good in your life. No, when things are going good, you think you're just one step away from being a Buddha.
Or an enlightenment.
Right. But you get in situations like that and you realize that there are parts of me that are still old and still running on the old principles. And that's good, you see. If you're a real practitioner, not that you're not, but if you mean you really want to transform, when you're in the doctor's office and this stuff comes up or something happens and you get just furious, like the old you is out, you realize she's still there. Right? She's not as strong as she used to. She's not around as much as she used to be. But she's still there. I mean, the way I see it, it's like, it's like when you make a campfire or something. You may wake up in the middle of the night and there'll be no smoke, but the coals may still be hot. And if you blow on them a little bit, the fire will come up. And for many of us, we still have lots of these kind of coals within us. They're not inflamed the way they used to be. But they're still there, and when the winds of a situation blow across, whoosh, and you wonder, where'd that come from? I thought I had worked through that, or that should tell you, no. These formations within ourselves, these old formations that have developed in us over many decades.
Fred, if I may, isn't it realistic, because we're talking about expectations too, is it sometimes people tell me that it is unrealistic to be faced with a situation like that, and no matter how much you practice, that you're not going to have fear?
Again, I don't, I can only speak from my own experience, and I have not faced that exact experience. Right. But I'm sure from being with other people, some people do quite well in those situations, don't they? And some people don't do well in those situations. So is it possible? I think it's possible. I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't know about perfection, not even a twinge. I mean, obviously, we're human beings, and obviously, would you rather get good news than bad news? That's human, isn't it? Right. So it's not that we're like indifferent, or kind of indifferent to life. Oh, I don't care what happens. Terminal cancer, health, it's all the same to me. I mean, that's a little over the top, okay? But the balance is, whatever has to happen, let it happen. It comes from understanding, if that's the diagnosis, I'll deal with it, If it's not malignant, I'll deal with that. If it is malignant, I'll deal with that. Because the truth is, that's what's going to happen anyhow. You see, that's the truth. And all our melodrama and all our acting out and our emotionality is a sideshow. Right? For the truth of, at the end of the day, if it's a malignant diagnosis, I'm going to have to deal with it. Make choices, make decisions. And wouldn't I rather make it in clarity? Right? Rather than a mind that's, full of fear and anger and sadness and right? I mean, wouldn't we want to make that kind of decision in clarity and with a peaceful mind and understanding? Yeah. So again, I don't know about absolutes, but I would certainly say yes. One can live a life free of anxiety and fear, just dealing with things as they arise. Again, as somebody said, fear is always future-based. Future-based is always fantasy. Fantasy means what? Fantasy means what? It's not real. All our future thinking is not real. Anybody disagree with me? See, I mean, we read these things, right? The past is gone, the future hasn't come, we only have the present. And we go, oh yeah, I understand that. but yet we act right. And here we're going, no, I want to control the future. So again, it is something to be worked on. You recognize that in yourself. You go, no, I got to take this deeper. There's a part of me that doesn't understand it. I used to say people, yeah, it's like they would tell me about this like you, and I'd say, yeah, you get Dharma, but there's a part of you that doesn't get it at all. You need to teach Dharma to that part of yourself because it's still operating on the old, and that's really what it's about. That's the transference. That's where it gets inside you. You really believe it, and you realize there's a part of you that's still holding on to old beliefs, old ways of being, and I got to work with her. I got to work with her. I can't just ignore her. I can't just expect her to be different because she operates, from old principles. I have to deal with her. All right? This is a path of what? Liberation from suffering. Well, obviously there's a part of us that still suffers. Maybe she's the one we need to be thinking about liberating rather than everybody else, Yes.
I suspect you'll agree that there is a place for planning.
Of course.
This retreat, for example, is a result of planning.
That's a good function of our mind. That's a good use of it. We have a planning function, and you're right, it does. Right.
And yet, just speaking for myself, I tend to obsessively overplan and spend too much of my time scouting out ahead, thinking, trying to plan the future and being anxious about that.
Okay. I mean, yes. That's a good analysis of Andrew. I would agree with that. It sounds like you agree with it. So so what's the?
And then I'm sure there isn't a simple. Well, let me just ask you. I mean, does one draw the line?
You're a bright guy, Andrew, and you already see it so clearly. And the fact that you're asking tells me that you haven't taken ownership of it. Because the way you said it is perfect, right? You can see the limits of there's a retreat and just, there are things that need to be planned, but bring this and, and that's all within the realm of reality. And it seems to be you're very clear that there's another whole thing that goes on that's over the top. How do you know it's over the top? Because you use the words. It is obsessive and it creates anxiety. See, there it is. Planning, normal planning is not obsessive and it doesn't create emotional affliction. So that is why in the realm of mindfulness, it is important that we be in touch with our feelings because they give us good feedback, such as, I've crossed the boundary. And again, we are, there is a reason. There's a reason that when the mind and the and the gifts of the thinking mind, sometimes planning, logic, analysis, those are all useful tools, especially in a society like we have where, a couple hundred years ago when everybody was much more agricultural, rural, trades were much simpler, there was less a need for developing that, more logical, rational, analytical part of ourselves. But these days, more and more, that's just life. That's a lot of our work. That's a lot of it. So it is that part of our thinking mind is more utilized, and obviously has a place. But again, the key, again, I'd say to you, Andrew, do you know when you're healthy, physically healthy? How do you know it?
I feel good.
You feel good. Okay. So we'd say there's an absence of physical suffering. There's an absence of physical discomfort. The body feels, it's free of discomfort, it's free of pain, it's energetic, right? You know how your body feels when it is well. And you know how your body feels when it is a little unwell to very unwell. You know it. You know it because you know it when it's healthy, and you know when it's becoming afflicted. Okay. The mind is the same way. It is no different. When the mind is at ease, when the mind is open, when the mind is relaxed, we would call that what? The mind is healthy. My mind is healthy. Right? And if my mind is agitated, if it's constricted, if it's angry, if it's resentful, if it's scared, if it's, it is sick. Right? I mean, in Buddhism, in the same way, in the Abhidhamma, in the Buddhist system of psychology, where there's enumeration of many, many, many positive mind states of mind that are attributes of the enlightened mind or the awakened mind, there's also a very long list of afflictions, right? It's interesting, that's thousands of years old. It is no different, that if you went to a medical manual and they would list all the diseases and the symptoms and the afflictions. So when you're diagnosing, what the illness is, and they're called afflictions. Right? So we have physical afflictions and we have mental afflictions. And so, again, if you're in touch with yourself and if you're able, see, the trouble is, it's sort of like we were just saying, I mean, we're so used to accepting, except when it's out of control. We're just used to accepting with a certain degree of anxiety, worry, anger, resentment, sadness, you know what I mean? That this is just normal, and it's only when it becomes kind of dysfunctional or we act out, that we really go, oh, it's over the top, I got to bring it back. You know what I mean? I got to bring it back. But it's none of it is healthy, you see. And when we can, that's why the Buddha had a word. Well, he probably didn't say, but he didn't speak Sanskrit. But anyway, it's a word in Buddhism. Everybody know the word dukkha, D-U-K-K-A-H, dukkha. And dukkha it means afflictions. It means suffering. It means dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness. I mean, the whole realm of being off. It is the opposite of. Right. And so it is so much easier to kind of put all these, kind of normative, afflictive mind states and just put them in the category of suffering, right? And so whether you're just a little pissed or you're just a little anxious or you're just a little obsessive, when you're aware of it, you say, I'm suffering. Which is very different, but most of the time we think we're totally justified, don't we? And that's the problem. But if we can go through a process of relabeling where we just, I'm suffering. Right? Or like, saying over here, you're in the doctor's office and you realize there's a part of me that's suffering right now. Oh, that's what it is. And then obviously the next big question is what? Is that what I want to do? Because we now have the tools not to. We have mindfulness, we have concentration, we have deep looking. We have the tools to transform it. Is that clear? So before we move on to the second mantra, yes?
Fred, you said something before that touched me very deeply. I'd love to hear more about it. So you talked about although the mantra says that have more happiness, we have to deal with certain circumstances. So the criminals, we have to put them away before they hurt us, right? And then you also said that we have to understand the criminal is the result of causes and conditions. And so my realization is often we are the cause, right? Think of countries, right? We get in war because we kill one of us, we kill three of them, we kill six of them.
Yeah.
Same in the family, right? I have to defend my boundaries against that, whatever. Not realizing often that I'm actually the cause of their condition.
Yes. Which also means what? The opposite is what? That I am also part of the solution. as I change. Both change myself, change the way I interact, relate with them, right? Yeah. And that's whether it's personal, very personal, interpersonal, or on a world scale. You know, how do we see that our enemies, it's an interaction, right? I mean, the whole thing is interaction. And we always want to change who? Them. We never think, oh, maybe if I change myself and change how I relate to them, that might begin to change the situation. But that's another whole thing. Whatever has to happen, let it happen. I mean, are we clear on this one? I mean, it's something to be deeply meditated on, practiced. But just, do we have an understanding? Okay, good. Whatever the situation is, it's fine. I would imagine if the last one brought up some issues, this one will do even more. Again, I don't speak Tibetan. He was a Tibetan teacher, so again, please understand that whenever there is translation, a translator is choosing a word to match another word in another language. And especially in language where they don't have alphabet, but they have characters, words often had many meanings, many shades of meaning within one character. So it's fine. I'm sure there was no word translated meaning it's fine in Tibetan, fine. There's probably multiple shades of meaning in that character that the translator goes, well, fine best says it. You see, please understand that. But it may not be that. Okay? So situations mean what? Whatever the situation is. Let's look at that one. What does that mean? What is, anybody here have a situation? Okay, what did you say, Charner? All right, so situation just may mean life. And, a situation just could be whatever is happening. That's a situation. Okay, are we clear? So, whatever the situation. Now, again, each one of us, throughout our life, right, moment to moment, day to day, we are presented with what? Situations. Okay? This is a situation. How do you like that? We're in a situation right now. This is a situation. When you go outside, walking meditation, you're in another situation. When you go into the dining hall, you're in another situation. Right? How your body is right now is a situation. How your mind is right now is a situation. Right? So internally, externally, life is all about what? Situations. Is that clear? So, whatever the situation is, it's fine. It's okay. It is the way it is. Now, again, I don't think he's meaning any moral judgment, ethical judgment. He's not saying, because I can hear somebody going, what? Right? I mean, somebody coming into the post office and killing a bunch of people, that's fine. I mean, raping, killing, hurting, that's fine. How can anybody say that, right? He's not saying that. Please understand, this is not a moral statement or an ethical statement. Fine means what? When something is okay, when something is fine, how do we relate to that? We accept it. Yeah. Because we understand again that in this moment, it could not be any different than it is. Could it? How could it be any different than it is? Because that's the way it is. And that's the fineness. That's the okay. In certain traditions, it's called every moment is innately perfect. And we might go, what? I see a world full of imperfection, right? Isn't that what we see? So how could somebody say inherently every moment is perfect? It just means it's perfectly what it is because it is just a bunch of causes and conditions. Do you remember the rattlesnake? You see, the rattlesnake is a perfect rattlesnake, isn't it? It is what it is. It's totally showing up as it is. It's perfect. The situation is developing perfectly according to causes and conditions. Whether we like it or don't like it, right? That's coming from what? From us. But the situation in itself is perfect. Right? So let's say you went into lunch and the food was totally burnt. Right? Now I would say, from what he's saying, is whatever the situation, it's fine because what? The truth is what? The food is perfectly burnt. It's just manifesting in the moment as perfectly burnt food. All the causes and conditions of overheating and all that have all manifested, and the food is perfectly burnt. Right? It's fine. That's the way it is. I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it. It is perfectly perfect. You know, I'm either going to. The question is what? I'm going to either eat it or what, or not eat it. Right? I'm not going to make a big deal about it. Why? Because it's the way it is. Am I missing something? I mean, should I go in there and curse out the chef? What do you think? Fire him.
Unemotionally.
Well, hopefully before you do that, you might just dialogue a little bit. Perhaps something happened. Perhaps they're learning. They're in a learning. They may. Okay. So hopefully you'd slow it down and look into causes and conditions. But if it's maybe happened too many times, you may want to do that. See, that was good. See, that's one extreme, right? The other extreme would be what? Yeah, poor chef. I mean, probably have problems at home. I don't want to say anything negative to him. He's probably already having a bad day. I don't want to hurt his feelings. Yeah, I'll just eat it. I have my 40th anniversary coming up. I think, that would probably help him along to invite him to come cater it, right? Right. See, that's the other extreme, Gunter. There are people at the other extreme from you. I just want you to know that. All right. So again, it's, things have to be dealt with intelligently, wisely. So each one of you in this room has had situations in their life, and I would imagine everybody here has situations in their life that in your mind you are thinking it's not fine. Is that true? So I want, before we end, let's spend the next time thinking about them in this new way. If this is new for you, pick easy ones. If you think you get it, pick really the toughest ones. The one that you're really clear. Yeah, I understand, Fred, but this situation is really not okay. Right? This one is not fine the way it is. I am perfectly justified to be upset and agitated about this one. Right? Everybody in here has them. Right? So take a moment, close your eyes, and find one of those situations. And again, if you want, pick a nice juicy one. One that up to now you have not been willing to move into the fine, it's okay category. Stands out. And with this kind of understanding, can you make it fine? Fine is not approval. Right? Fine is not ethical, moral. Fine doesn't mean that we don't act, but that we are at a place of understanding that breeds acceptance and compassion. So please, everybody, let's all take a moment and find one of those unacceptable, personally unacceptable situations that is just, in our mind, just plain wrong. I will never accept that as being fine. And see if you can turn it around. And if it's a struggle, kind of be aware of what's going on inside you. Where's the resistance? To seeing a situation that is certainly is in a certain way unacceptable to you. And seeing it in this way of understanding. If you're having difficulty, pay attention to what's making it difficult. What's the resistance? What don't we want to give up? So who had a little resistance to their situation, accepting it? With a 45-year-old heroin addict, there's more probability for bad outcome than good outcome, isn't that the truth? Yeah, and that's just the truth. And, you know, what we are doing here is working with our conditioning. But cultivating this understanding, cultivating this wisdom, cultivating this compassion, so we can end our suffering. 2, act in the wisest, most intelligent way we can to benefit the son. That's what we're here for. And we see that our conditioning, which is based on an attachment that has been fostered for all kinds of reasons, healthy and unhealthy, is not helping, is it? Yeah. And so please, practice right here. Practice in the midst of this suffering within yourself. And you will see all the Buddha's teachings about attachment. Who else had a situation? Yes.
Okay.
Whatever the situation is, it's fine. That's what we're trying to look at. And I'm asking...
Well, I had a job where I worked in a doctor's office and with a medical transcript. We went to electronic medical records. They told me that I would have a job. when we converted. And then when we converted to electronic medical records, they met me at the door with my things, my belongings, and helping them in my car. My job was gone. So I have a real resentment.
Yeah. So again, it's all similar, isn't it? So, there are these situations in life. Obviously, situations that we perceive as good, right? I mean, you would not be telling me this story if they had offered you a job and a raise, right? Okay, so that could have been a situation too, and that would have been okay. But this was a situation that was not okay. I mean, it obviously, personal reasons of what they had said to you, betrayal, but also financial, right? It was, we would consider this, right? Now, it is what it is. Is that true? I mean, it happened. That's the reality. Whether you want it to happen, you think it should have happened, the reality is it happened, right? That's the first thing we need to accept. Whatever happened has happened. I wish it hadn't happened. I don't like that happened. I mean, we can, think that, but yet the truth is we want to come to a place where, yeah, it happened. I didn't like it. I didn't want it, but it happened. I have to deal with it, right? Now, why did it happen? See, what's the innate perfection of that situation that transcends right or wrong, the way I'd like it, that says, if you were objective about the situation, if it wasn't about you, because when it's about us, we certainly react in very different ways. That's true. But if it wasn't about you, why might have your job been terminated or eliminated?
No need for my position anymore.
Yeah, isn't that it? It's sort of like, you know what it's like? It's sort of like, being an innocent bystander, It happens all the time, right? I mean, some car goes out of control and somebody gets run over. I mean, they're just, an innocent bystander, right? And we go, how could that happen? You know what I'm saying? But it happens, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of times there are forces beyond our control, right?
So I don't have to be mad about it.
Yeah, well, being mad about it, again, is an affliction that only hurts you, doesn't it? I mean, that's the truth. You see, we are so used to holding on to these things. And, of course, everybody else around us is reinforcing it. God, you must be irate. You must want to go back there and blow them up or something. You should, well, again, if there's a legal basis, we have a lawyer in the room. But that's, again, it's
It is what it is.
yeah, again, this is not like laissez-faire, I mean, obviously this is not a happy situation. It creates a lot of difficulty for you. Saying, so it's not denying, that this is not a difficult situation. A difficult situation is different than an easy situation, right? A birth is very different from attending a birth is very different than attending a funeral. Would you agree? Even though we would say they're both, normal parts of life, but the context is very different.
Did you take the eye out of it and look at it?
Yeah, because the truth is, that's what happened. Right? I mean, it could have been someone else. MT could have been MT, and she's telling you about, they did a reshuffling at work and they eliminated my position. Yeah, I mean, there are ways probably that could have been handled in a nicer way. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of stuff. But again, why was it handled that way? Well, they are who they are. Maybe they're not the nicest people, or maybe they don't care, or maybe they're indifferent. Who knows? But if we knew, we would understand, wouldn't we? So again, it puts you in a difficult situation, but you want to be able to deal with a difficult situation so your life can move on, right? And as you know, staying in that repetitive, angry, playing it over and over and over, that's the second arrow we talk in Buddhism. The first arrow was the being let go. But now I'm shooting myself with arrows. I don't have to do that. The first arrow was enough, wasn't it? So it's like that. Maybe one more. Anybody got a good, really situation that they just had a lot of trouble they didn't want to accept? I hope you're going to top the other two.
I don't know about that. I have a recurring situation, and it is with homelessness and or just people that are asking for food. When I looked at it, when we did that exercise, one thing I saw.
Well, first tell me about the non-acceptance, or that this is not perfect means what? What is it about it that?
I'm thinking it's kind of dual. One is when my little self gets in the way and thinks I can fix the world. Like, I don't like that. But then, because I can't fix it all, and then what do you do in those situations that's common? So even if I try to do things, I have, whatever, we've all done things.
So you're talking about a personal situation where you see a homeless person, or you're talking about the idea of homelessness?
No, I mean literally when I drive from my house to the center, let's say.
You see them, but...
A lot, and sometimes I give them, sometimes I can help.
Somebody comes up to you when you're stopped at a stoplight.
Right. And I don't know, I have this internal struggle with this.
About what?
About not having enough in my car to give them everything, what I mean? Or enough money to give everybody. Or because I know it's not going to help 100%. I mean, I know that the reality is, what? I don't know.
Whatever the situation is, it's fine. It's not a moral judgment. It's not saying that homelessness and living on the streets and that kind of life, there's any goodness in it at all. It's not about that at all. It's saying whatever the situation is, it is the situation, right? Causes and conditions. Every person who's out there is out there because of causes and conditions, right? Many of them, like Denise just said, nothing to do with them. They just happen to be caught up in economic things and that. Or, right? So some happen that way. Some people, it's personal stuff. They have drug addiction. They have other kinds of mental, there are all kinds of causes and conditions that bring them to that place. Right? Each one of those people, causes and conditions have brought them to be in that place. In that sense, it is what it is. It is what it is because causes and conditions, it could not be any different because all these things are. So there they are. And I think you're absolutely right. The question is, what do I do? What do you do? You could what? You could be indifferent. That's life. Some people make it, some people don't. It could be like that. They get nobody to blame but themselves. That's not very understanding of causes and conditions, is it? Okay. The fact that when you see someone who is suffering, you naturally want to help them is good. That's called the heart of compassion. Right? And the fact that you spontaneously or naturally see somebody in difficulty and want to help them, that's good. That's the heart of the bodhisattva. Wants to help everybody. Is touched by the suffering of everyone. So that's good. Because inherently, even though there are causes and conditions, still the situation is one of suffering for this person. Right? And I mean, you could go home, clean out your bank account, clean out your retirement account, sell everything, and give it to all the homeless people. You could, couldn't you? And yet, what? Is that what you're going to do? No. What do you want to do? See, there's no right or wrong answer.
I just want to be able to meet each situation. So when I see, you know what I mean? Because sometimes I have a version at certain, and then why did I give you that version? You know. And,
Yeah.
But if I have the means when I have it, I just want to just
You know.
be okay with it.
You know, when I first went to India, and again, when I first went to India, it was in the early '70s. It was before homelessness was so omnipresent in our city streets. It was much rarer then. You know, you didn't see that many homeless back then. But when you went to India, you saw massive amount of people living on the streets and beggars. It was now it's. I used to think how unusual this was, coming from a culture where it wasn't. Now, I don't know if it's any better in either place. Maybe it probably is, but certainly it is as omnipresent in our cities as it is in India. Now maybe it's worse there, but anyhow, it was not something I was used to, and most Westerners who went to India, lived there, wasn't. And I early on had an interview with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and talked about many things. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, as you travel around India, you're going to encounter many beggars, which is true. And he said, when they come up to you asking for something, you may give them a few pesos or rupees or whatever you want. He said, but the most important thing that you do is that you look at that person in the eye, and in your mind you say, at this point, I can only help you in this little way. But when I am a fully enlightened Buddha, and I really have the capacity to really transform you in the world, I will do anything I can to help you. Right to that human being in your mind, you say that. So that's your actual generosity may not solve that problem, but in your heart, you're cultivating that vast vow to be of benefit, and you do it specifically for that person. So oftentimes our capacity to help is limited, right? I mean, you have limited resources. If you were Bill Gates, you could, you could house all the homeless people in Tampa, right? And not even your fortune wouldn't even be touched. I don't know why they don't do that, but they don't. But you could, but you don't have that means now, do you? So if you had that, if you were as touched by homelessness and you were Bill Gates, you would have the power to at least do something more significant. But at this point, you just can do what you can do. It's not a perfect world. Yeah, so we just do our best, don't we? That's all.